what is so incredibly beautiful about this? It's not that God and Israel hook up and then things go sour and then he's like, you know what, I'm done with you. That's not what it is at all. It's
No.
that God and Israel get married. She's unfaithful. She breaks his heart royally. She gives him the middle finger repeatedly and despises him, mocks him, takes his name in vain again and again,
Right.
murders her children, etc. And then God says, you know what? You did all that, but I still love you. I'm going to bring you back to me. You're completely unworthy, completely undeserving, but that's who God is.
Yes. It
God
is.
is a gracious God. And so God is now going to bring her back through Christ, through this husband who dies. And then that's the ending of the old covenant. And then the husband that rises is now the beginning of the new covenant. Wow. Right?
Yeah. And it's a beautiful story. Like you said, it's a love story that we miss in the mainstream church. We miss it because our seminaries, our pastors, they don't get it. They don't put it all together. And like you said, the first time I heard it and understood it, it was like I was so excited and it was just like, wow, how come I have never heard scripture put together this way from the bringing the Old Testament and the New Testament and just combining them to see a continuous story, just part 1 and part 2, so to speak, but it's beautiful. And we tend to look at covenant and law and equate them when they're not the same thing. The
Hmm.
the law is like you said, it's the set of instructions how to have a happy marriage with your creator, how to live with others. But the covenant is so much different and like you said, just like when we get married, we're in a covenant. And that's exactly what had to happen between God and Israel. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's just such a beautiful story. And I'm so glad you
Right?
wrote that book because I don't know if there's really a book that explains it all. I've heard it in the sermon and through, I think Jim Staley told a story like that.
Mm.
And that was the first time I'd heard it on a video. But then it was like, wow, to be able to read it and have all the verses there in front of you and be able to check them, look them up for yourself and see this story unfolding is beautiful.
Yeah, indeed. And it's interesting. I had a discussion with Rob Solberg
Mm.
last week,
I saw that.
and yeah, he's a very nice guy. I think he's a good brother. We see the covenant very differently, of
Mm.
course. And he was describing it as a suzerain vassal relationship. And
Mm.
that's just fancy talk for saying that it's between a king and his subjects.
Right.
And I was like, okay, certainly there's an aspect of that in the old covenant, but what if it's a love relationship? You know? And he didn't seem to have an answer to that because that is how so many of us have been conditioned is that
Mhm.
the Old Testament, that was between a king and his subjects.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, obviously God is a king. No one's debating that. But what if it's between a husband and his wife?
Mhm.
Because we're like, I want to
Right.
have this contract between us, and it's going to be cold and methodical and corporate. Nobody wants that. Nobody
Right.
enters into not willingly. And I don't see God as forcing himself, like you got to marry me or else. That's not it, right? And so he takes them this love relationship, right?